Good day. My name is Bob Zerbe. I'm talking to you today about middleware monitoring, specifically for WebSphere MQ today. And we're going to give you a quick high-level review of what this product is capable of doing. It's designed around 4 primary principles. One is visualization, where I can see a quick look of what my queue managers are doing, what my agent's doing, or I could get into things that are a little more meaningful, like what about all my outbound traffic from one environment to another? And so I can see that and see what it's doing in real time. And if we can see it, then we should be able to collect metrics on it, which is history. And history is a very important part of the discovery of problems process, because if you don't have a point of reference from a historical perspective, you don't know what good versus bad numbers are. So you have to have some kind of frame of reference. So history is good. The eventing is, of course, the capability of alerting when one of these thresholds is overcome, and we're going to create a problem and walk you through that. Of course, all this information and alerting and metrics can be integrated into BMC's TrueSight operations management solution, which gives you the ability to then do probable cause analysis, dynamic thresholding, and auto baselining, which are very, very powerful things and really where the entire industry is going. This dashboard here, though, just to quickly kind of summarize what this is a series of objects, 8 transmission queues with their 8 corresponding channels going outbound to 4 other queue managers on other systems. And you can see right now that there's traffic flowing. My queue depths are good. There's an alert down here. This is a different problem. We'll come back to that in a minute. My channels all look good. And I've got all my queue managers running on the remote side. And we can even see the remote side and that it's receiving messages right now. In fact, it's received 646,000 since this application started up. But at the bottom of our screen here, we have an alert. And if we click on it, it'll take us right to the product, or the object rather in this case, and it's a queue and it has messages on it, the claims request failed queue, and these messages are extremely old. This is in seconds here, and you may say, well, why is that number so big? It's because in my demo environment, this is just something these are messages that I keep out there and use all the time. So this is an alert that I can simply acknowledge here. It could also go into TrueSight operations management, and the beauty is, if that's a queue that normally has messages on there, notice there's 24 messages on the queue right now. There's no one putting to it, no one getting to it. So TrueSight operations management can learn from that and can quiet down all that alert noise that may not make any difference. But let's take another look at this from a different perspective. Here's my claim, the same application from a self-service standpoint. And here I can see what these queues are doing and how many messages are on each queue, and they're updating in real time. And I can actually go down and browse into this queue and see why these messages have failed. We'll come back to that a little later on. What I'd like to do is take you through a different scenario. And I want to take you through that project called Prod Outbound that has a series of channels. And let's sort by channel name, by channel type of sender channel. And I'm actually going to cause a problem. Now, in the real world, this would probably be caused by some kind of network anomaly or a remote queue manager being down. And we're going to stop that channel. And if we refresh that, we'll see the channel is stopped. Now let's go back to the monitoring interface, our dashboard, and see what happens. When most people monitor, they look at things as individual objects. Well, objects always have relationships with other objects or other components or other applications. So when something goes wrong, you want to know what else is impacted by a problem. And we've noticed now at the bottom of the screen, we've had a series of alerts fire. Now, do I need to fire this many alerts? No. The intent here is to show you that the flexibility of what types of alerts we can send. The first one here is that a queue is get inhibited. That means that the consuming application can't get the messages off of the queue. This is a traditional problem that the MQ administrator can never solve, because the getting application in general has to be connected. Now, the reason this is get inhibited is because I have this channel here that is stopped during production hours, and we see that down here at the bottom. It's in white. That channel status has stopped. We also see that this queue has messages with no readers on it. And we can look at the queue depth here and see it's climbing. So from one simple act of a channel stopping, we now know that traffic flowing from one object across one host to another has been compromised. And now we have an escalating alert that just popped up, and I'll sort this at the top. It's blinking. That says I have a queue depth that's over 100, and it's well over 100, and it's been that way for 2 minutes. So if you have SLAs on messages that have to be delivered or processed, It could be a trade. It could be an Amazon order. It could be eBay. It could be online corporate banking or online personal banking, whatever it is. Maybe it's even a reservation to get tickets to travel on vacation, and it times out. What happens? The person logs off the website and goes somewhere else. And the reason for that problem could have been that messages, their requests didn't get processed. So we're seeing some escalations here. I could click on this and go down to that object, and we can see there's still traffic flowing to the putting side. There's still messages being produced, but the getting side now is zero. And one of the things that TrueSight Middleware Monitor provides is something called message rates. And message rates detect the inbound rate per minute and the outbound rate per minute. And you'll notice the outbound rate here is 0. Now, there are some applications where that could be the normal rhythm of the application. But in this particular case, that is not true. So we can see here that the messages have just dropped off, and we can change the range on this. One of the neat things about this product, I could simply go in here and do something like this. And I could say, gee, I want to change the granularity of how I see data in here. And I can go into this and say, I want to see data in minutes, and I want to see it for a 30-minute range. And I can do OK. And obviously I should change the text on that. So a lot of the dashboarding and the imaging creation here is really, really easy. It's all role-based, so you have to be authorized to do it. But once you're authorized, you can create all kinds of custom things for people that solve problems or provide information in a matter of seconds, as you're seeing me do live here. And I can now go and see that, okay, at 13:05, give or take, we had a change in the put rate versus the get rate. Now, we still have the put rate going on, but the get rate is dropped down to 0. Clearly, that's a problem. This is from an object perspective. If we go back to our dashboard, though, we also had a channel problem. And if we drill down to that channel, we can see that the red lights indicate the channel's down. We did get an alert that told us that. And we can also look and see the channel troubleshooting. This is clearly a case where I stopped the channel. So this is an obvious example here of what's occurred on this channel. If it was in retry, that would be a different type of problem, and we might see something like a remote side not available or some other kind of message. Here, what would happen is an administrator gets their alert. They simply log on to the middleware administrator part of the product. They can sort on all the channels, and they can see, well, here's the channel that's in question, and I can start that channel. And sure enough, everything's back and running. And if I go back and look at my runtime, my production dashboard, let's take a look and just watch this for a moment. You notice there are literally hundreds of thousands of messages flowing across these 8 transmission queues and these channels to remote queues on remote queue managers on another side. This is all easily set up and built in a matter of minutes, this kind of dashboard. And what we're waiting for right now is for the agents that are reporting the state of the objects to now report back. My agent reporting interval was set to 60 seconds. You could set it to 30 seconds if you wanted to, or more or less as required at the server level. This will come back. There it goes. And now all those alerts have scrolled off because they've been resolved. Now, if we were sending these alerts over to TrueSight Operations Management, we could send an event cleared, and it would auto clear as well over there. And that's one of the big problems with a lot of the middleware products in the market. They all send alerts. The problem is they send too many alerts, and there's no way to say, hey, that the problem is resolved unless you do it manually. So what just happened there? Everything seems to be running now. Let's just take a look by going back and saying, well, let's look at our event journal, and let's look back at what just happened over the last few moments. And if I go into this and go back for a period of time and get an instance data, it shows me all the alerts that have occurred within any window of time. You can go back as long as you want, and you can do it based upon a alert rule or an event rule or the threshold, or based upon a range like I did here. And we can see some queues were get inhibited. We see a channel's not running. If we want to see which channel, we can simply go down and see all that information very, very handily. So the beauty of this is we actually audit all of our alerting. So you can go back in time to understand how often are we getting these alerts. Maybe we're getting them too often. Maybe our thresholds are too low. So that's just a kind of a quick example of some of the things you can do with Middleware Monitor. If I drill down to the queue manager, I'd like to show people this kind of summary view. that shows me, I can sort by the current queue depth of any queue. We can show you the get rate per minute, the put rate per minute, the oldest message age. I could go into here and I could say, gee, you know what, there's some other information that I've been told we have to be displaying to meet our SLAs. And I'm going to put that on here right now. And there's four fields I want to put in there. The last get time, the last put time, and how about the total messages? The message DQ total, which is the number of messages consumed, and the number of messages produced. And when I change that, it changes this view. This is a global view. You see how quick and easy this was to do. And now I can now see additional information about all of my objects on a queue manager called products. And I can sort these by last get time or last put time and go up to the top here. And you can see all that and see what's active. I can even see the number of threads that are on putting or getting to a queue. For example, I go to this one and look, we can drill down and see the application threads connected to this queue. In this case, it just happens to be a bunch of programs putting messages on the queue in a financial application. If I look at one of my transmission queues for my prior application and looked at this one, you would see something entirely different. You'd see channel information as well. And here we have one of the application tags is I have a channel connected to this transmission queue. And that's how the messages are being routed. It could be internal within your organization, or it could be from one bank to another, the bank to the Fed. It could be customer to customer or customer to partner, any number of things. If I want to see my channels, I can quickly come in here and look at my channels and see all my sender channels, and they're running, and the last message date and time. Now, this is one of my favorite scenarios, when the end user calls and says, we're not getting our messages. And I can say, actually you are, and at 13:28, which would be 1:28 in the afternoon, you just received 279 messages. And those questions start to go away. Now you can also empower the customer with the self-service capabilities of our TrueSight middleware management solution, and they could literally go in there and say, I want to look at my prod outbound again. I can look at it from a self-service standpoint and say, let's look at my queues and see the current queue depths are all healthy. Everything's looking good here. I can look at the queue status and how many readers and writers are on there, the last message get in time. Now, this is more of from an administrative standpoint. If you're authorized to do so, you can go in here and make changes to an object. You can also browse queues and do things like that. I want to share one more little scenario with you, and then we'll pause for a moment. Let's go to our claims application. This is a simple application. It's a simple illustration of MQ self-service. I have a series of queues out here, and if I refresh this, you'll see that the queue depth is changing because there's readers and writers on most of these queues. But I have this claims request failed queue, and this is when messages have a problem. And the scenario here was they found out that within the application there was a bug, and they needed to go search the data. And the problem was, it happened to do with messages that had EKG. And wow, there's a lot of messages here. It seems like I'd have to look at all these individually. There's a search detail. So there's an iterative search capability. And what the rumor was that the dollar amount field had pound signs in it. And I can search down, and sure enough, we found 5 messages that had pound signs. If I go and edit that message, I can scroll down, and sure enough, I can see that that EKG, it should have been 500. And I could then save that message, and you'll notice that now only 4 messages are in the search criteria because we resolved that, and that message has been taken care of. And I could do the same thing for each message and go through the process. But in the interest of time, we won't do that today. So that's a quick example of self-service. Somebody wants to know what their queues are doing. The way middleware monitoring works is it basically is agent-based. And I have lots of queue managers in my environment, and we can build what are called dashboards that reflect different things about applications versus individual objects. And in this case, I'm going to show you a dashboard that took me literally about 5 minutes to build, and where we have trade activity. We can see the pending message count. So these are trades that have not completed. Notice the message age is 0. That's good. The processes that are driving in, the processes that are consuming out, and I can see my message rates again, a very important metric that we provide. This will update automatically, as I said, and it gives me kind of a view of what's going on. Maybe I'm interested in trending information. So we can look at trending information, and we can look at any range you want and see how things are trending from across all the critical queues for things like service level agreements. Maybe we want to look at this from a global hub perspective and see how traffic is flowing. And again, I have the pending counts are all 0, so this is a pretty healthy application. That's a good thing. So again, who would be the target user for this? It might be the application team. It could be the production team. It certainly could be somebody who's doing could be a stress test or a critical end of quarter trading processes that are going on. And I just want to share one more with you that's similar to this in terms of a financial type of application called e-payments. This is where banks reconcile with each other, and I have this process status that shows me the messages coming in, and the rate is healthy. There's nothing being pending here. The rate going out. And this all looks pretty good right now. There's been over 1 million messages into this hub since it started this morning. And now I've got messages pending. It's going to SWIFT, Federal Wire, Clearinghouse, and I forget what CLS stands for, but these are 4 of the critical areas where banks do reconciliation on a daily basis. And notice there's been no rejected or suspended transactions. So that's a good thing. So everything seems to be healthy here. Just another example of how you can quickly build dashboards that reflect how things work together versus looking at an individual object. And one last thing here I'll show you is kind of a workflow. Sometimes people have Visio diagrams that reflect their middleware environment. We can take a Visio diagram and bring it to life, and I don't have a Visio diagram, but this could simply depict that, where you see the input coming in for insurance, and either it's new business, it's a renewal, or it's claims, and each one of those 3 is a major process in and of itself. But new business and renewals go through a risk assessment. So you see kind of a workflow flowing through different queues that flow across different servers in the MQ space. If there's a rejection, well, why would that be? I don't need to know that right now from an infrastructure standpoint, but it could be someone has not made their payments, or they've had 5 car accidents in 6 weeks. Been trying to take the license away, I suppose. But when it's low risk, it could be you're issuing a new policy, or you're taking in a monthly payment, or whatever it might be. So this concept of these workflows and these views can transcend multiple servers. And that's just another type of dashboard that we have available in the middleware monitoring suite. We clearly look at things from how they reside by their host. So we monitor ourselves. We know if we're running. We also have policy-based alerting, so we can automatically discover things on the fly and add them into the alert policies that we have in place so the right people get notified at the right time. We can even have alerts that have delays to say, don't tell me about this problem unless it's been true for a certain period of time. But here is a list of all the queues in a queue manager. You'll see there's quite a bit of them in here. Again, if you only want to know where there's a problem, you get your alert, and you click on it, and you go right to that object. And we saw this object before, the claims request failed object. So this is kind of a very quick, high-level overview of what TrueSight Middleware Monitor does and how you can use the MQ self-service aspect to look at a specific application. You can go in and browse queues. You can even do things like save messages and replay them. So if I wanted to, I could save all these messages. So I can go to the claims application, using Internet Explorer now to do the same. We're doing the same thing we just did before, looking at all the local queues, and we'll close our status window. And I want to save these failed messages. I might want to look at them or use them later. So now I can save them, and I'm going to put them into a DSMA folder, and I'm going to put them into a folder called MESSAGES. Yes. And now the messages are there. We'll save them. If I wanted to put those messages somewhere else, I could upload those messages. I could browse and save to file, save as, computer, TSMA, messages, save. So now if I wanted to upload those messages, supposing I wanted to replay those messages or work on them somewhere else besides the claims failed queue, I could upload those messages. and go to that directory. Again, this is a local share, so I'm sharing these, saving these messages locally to my directory because I am authorized to do so. And there they are. And I could preserve all the context. And if I refresh this, lo and behold, those messages are on this queue. And this is a classic case where people might want to go in and edit the messages to create good data and bad data and do things like that. And that's kind of what the TrueSight Middleware Administrator portion of the suite can do for you. So it gives you the ability to do some MQ self-service, again, role-based, assuming you're authorized to do that. The classic cases in the non-production environments, there are developers and testers and QA people who want to see what the status of their queues is. This also works in production. And if they don't have access to our middleware console, and they don't have access to application views like this that show them the real-time status of how many messages are pending, they're calling the MQ administrator and they're saying, what's my application doing? Can you tell me what my queue is doing? What's my channel status? We're not getting our messages. Those are all disruptive problems or disruptive requests that are ad hoc that come to the MQ administrators on a daily basis. One of the things this product will do, it will empower the end user through a control-based way to see their objects without affecting or putting any risk out there because they can't break anything. They can only view them and save them offline in various environments. And that's one of the ways this product even spreads more value about the enterprise. It's not just about maintaining and assuring production delivery of messages and transactions, but it's also enabling the people in development and QA and for stress test to see what's going on and wrap some kind of visualization around what they're doing at that moment in time. And since you can collect history, your history will show you what's going on for days, weeks, months, etc. So this is we're gonna change gears here a little bit. We're gonna do this is for TrueSight Middleware Administrator exclusively, which can be part of the overall product, or it can be it's independent. In this particular scenario, there's a classic problem with dead letter messages. If I go out here and look at my queues, I've got 5 queues. I've got a dead letter queue, a remote queue, and let's actually sort these by where they are. And I'm going to go to my remote queue here, and I'm going to put some messages on this queue. All right, so let's just put a few of them out there. 1, 2, 3, 5 messages, maybe a few more. We put some messages out on the queue, and if we refresh this, whoa, the messages all went to the dead letter queue. Well, why didn't they go to the target queue? Well, we can browse, and one of the things TrueSight Middleware Administrator does is it gives you the reason code. And the reason code is something that the administrator spends a lot of time digesting or trying to find out by going into individual messages and looking at the header or trying to look at a log or somewhere to figure out what's going on. Well, the reason code is it's a bad object name. We're sending them to this queue manager called APP1 on this destination queue. Oh, that's silly. That's the old name. Well, this is a very obvious example. It's designed that way for simplicity. But if I went out here, I could replay these messages, and I could cherry pick them one at a time, or I could do all of them. And let's say, well, that's not the queue name. That's the queue name. And what we want to, that's the destination queue we want them to go to. We can look at our identifiers. We can change things in all the headers if we wanted to. Or we can just go ahead and do a replay here. And here we can see, okay, it's going to go to that destination queue based on individual messages. And we'll replay it. Messages were successfully replayed, 5 messages. And if we go out and we refresh, there they are. They're all out there on the queue that I wanted them to get to. And I can then browse the content. And you can see we do display, we preview the first 80 bytes of a message. And by the way, that can be suppressed as well. If you have personal credit information that you want to hide, we can do what's called property filters to filter out display of this data if you wanted to. That's just a simple example of how we do dead letter messaging. I do want to share one more with you briefly. With my claims application, this is a nice simple example, so it's a good illustration. You'll notice that the maximum queue depths on these queues are different. Supposing this insurance company has realized that they're going to do a acquisition of another insurance company. And someone said, we need to change some of the attributes for all these queues. Well, I could go in and do this manually, or I could go down here to manage objects, again, assuming I'm authorized. And with this wonderful drop-down box, you don't have to know syntax. You just have to know what it is you want to do. And again, you have to be authorized. You can delete things, you can clear queues, you can start channels, you can do all kinds of things. We're just going to go and alter a local queue. Well, which local queues do we want to alter? All of our claims queues, except for the external ones. And we just have to pull up a sample queue just to give the attributes. And so I'm going to modify these queues, not these two. We don't care about those. Those are external. And what is it I want to modify? Well, we want these messages to be non-persistent, and we want the maximum queue depth on all these messages because we don't know about the new volumes. We're going to make it 100,000. And there's other things I could do here. There's other parameters I can change here. The whole list is available to you here. Maybe the queue depth high limit should be some other number. You can change that. You can enable or disable them. But let's leave it simple for the moment. And now I'm going to go forward, and I have the ability to go in here and change the persistence to non-persistent, the maximum queue depth to 100,000 on this list of queues. I could schedule this, and I could send an email notification to me when it's completed, and even put a note in there. Or in the purposes of just time for now, we're just going to go ahead and execute it. And that's completed. So that's a great way for an administrator to do a lot of work very quickly. But the question remains, who did it, where, and when? And that's where you can do auditing. And with auditing, we can see in here that bzerby had gone in and had done a modify to the persistence and the maximum queue depth fields for a list of queues. This is just a summary level type of audit report. Then for each individual object, it shows me we changed persistence from 1 to 0, meaning non-persistent, and the maximum queue depth from 50 to 100,000. So we show you the before and after values on every change we make. Imagine how powerful it is, especially in the financial services companies with auditing. Notice down here we have a record of somebody creating a message. Now, we don't show you the message data in here, but we store that in a log. And if you wanted to get that data, we have that stored. It's in a compressed format, but that information is all available to you. Everything I've done today is in here. Well, we had a modified channel. What did I do? Well, I started it. Well, what did I do before? I stopped it. So now I can see that I stopped and started that channel. And we know who, when, and where. We had the dead letter queue. Let's take a quick look at that. It shows me we replayed messages off of the dead letter queue to a destination queue. So this auditing can be done by object. It can even be done by project. It depends upon what level of control or information you're looking for. And that's some of the auditing capability. The auditing, again, can be secured. It's very granular. It gives you the before and after values, which is something we believe is unique to BMC. And it's a great way to understand what's occurred and go back and make changes if you have to down the road. So that's another simple use case for MQ. We have TIBCO support as well, although I don't have my TIBCO system running right now. Here's something else. What if you wanted to see all your queue managers all in one place? But it shows me all my connections, the total queues, the total messages right now, the total transmission queues, and the total channels. And no channels are retrying, no channels are disabled. So that's all good. From there's lots of things I can see. I can see my archives because we can make backups of our queue managers. And here you can see all the backups which are made automatically based upon a time parameter if any changes are made to my environment. Okay, this is a really important point, by the way. This is a very big differentiator. And we can show queue handles and alias queues and everything, clusters, pub sub, all of that. Processes, authority records. We can even do an MQSC command. So that's kind of just a quick high level of what we can do and the things we can alert on. And now we're going to address a different use case. We're going to talk about something that's formerly known as Message Broker, which is currently IIB or IBM Integration Bus. This is a very important part of a lot of people's enterprise management strategies for things like replication of messages, routing messages to different destinations, fanning them out, so to speak, or even transforming messages from one format into another so they can be consumed by another application. It's a very, very important part of a lot of business strategies. And the broker is much, much more complex than MQ. What you're looking at here is a dashboard that shows 3 different servers. One server has 4 queue managers, and you can see my TrueSight Middleware Monitor agent is connected. One is the Enterprise Service Bus. It has 2 queue managers and a broker. And a third is my Web Services and Application Server tier. We're going to skip that for now, even though it's a low JVM memory beacon here warning us that we've got less than a certain amount of memory. But we're going to focus on broker. If I was to take you through the physical aspects of message broker, you would see the broker status. And everyone wants to know if their broker is up or down. This happens to be version 10. BMC supports versions 7, 8, 9, and 10 of broker, which is now IIB. When you in the overall hierarchy, underneath the broker, you have the execution groups, you have message flow, message processing nodes. There are configurable services that we basically list what's available there. But let's look at the execution groups for a moment. And in this particular broker, there are 4 execution groups. Choosing one, I can see that its status is also running. Again, that's another important thing to know. What is the status? We can also do what is called aggregate information. Now, in this simple environment, we only have 2 message flows here aggregated, but you could have had 200. And it's good to know what the overall performance is on that execution group. Now, we can do something that's very powerful by looking at the message flows that belong to an execution group. And in this particular case, there are 2 of them, as we said before. But I can actually go into one of these, and you'll see these columns that reflect different performance metrics, and I can slide over and see all these things. Some of these are more important than others. There's performance metrics, and there's this information. But I can actually go into here, and on my response flow, and click on this, and it pulls up all the individual message processing nodes into a subpane that you can view and see what's going on. I can sort on the maximum CPU time. Where is the most time being consumed? And it's in a message processing node called chain WMB status. Well, that's great, and we can alert on anything, keeping in mind what I said before. The 4 fundamental principles of TrueSight Middleware Monitor is visualization of the component. The data in the component can be alerted on if it's a dynamic metric, like a numeric, historical collection of those same metrics, and then, of course, dashboarding, which gives you the collaboration effort of putting things together on a single pane of glass. And then, of course, I could add even further the TrueSight Operations Management integration. So this is just all at the execution group level. When you go down hierarchically, you can then see the children that belong to there, and this is how the physical views all relate. This is out of the box how it all works. So if I look down here and look at my message flow, we have a default view that has 4 fields that are in red. You'll notice these fields will update, at least some of these fields will update automatically. The maximum elapsed time. That's how long it's been taking messages to go through the message flow. If you have an SLA, a service level, and things are taking longer than 1 microsecond, you might want to know about that. This is in microseconds. These red fields here would be things you might want to alert on when you've had an MQ backout, or some of the messages had errors. What a lot of people do is they put all these queues around their message broker or IIB to help them understand what's going on. That just puts extra overhead on the environment, whereas our approach is much, much more effective and intuitive. So we can see what's going on right now, the CPU time, last data collection cycle, and then we can go into here and look at the node statistics that you saw earlier and see what's happening within a flow and see where the maximum CPU time is. And it's in chain WMB status. That is a message processing node. So we could further drill down and see chain WMB status. And we can actually look at that and see the maximum and the minimum elapsed time and the number of invocations that are occurring now. We can collect history on this. Now, the final piece of architecturally within a message flow, you have the message processing nodes, which of course have logic in them and do work. But you can also have underneath there, you can have terminals. We don't recommend monitoring terminals because that puts a little bit too much overhead on the IIV environment, not by BMC, but by IBM and its publication of the statistical data down to the terminal level. So this is kind of just the hierarchical view of how things live physically in the broker world. What I'd like to do, though, is show you how we can take a look at this from a dashboard standpoint. Now, this is a smaller environment. If you had one of our customers has literally hundreds and hundreds of message flows, they would probably divide this up into smaller components like by execution group and by broker. But in this example, my broker's running, my execution groups are all running, the number of threads in pool seem to be okay. It's at a decent level. My message flows themselves, I can see what they're doing there, and I can drill down from here into the details. So this could be conceivably a home base. That could be something that just the IIB staff have access to. And it has all the key performance indicators that will automatically update dynamically as you go through processing. And if I jump down and drill down on the indicator, again, I can see the details of each component. I can look at the properties of each component, and there's lots of detail here. Don't need to spend too much time on this at the moment, but conceptually all that data is can be collected. What about CPU trending? We can trend CPUs based upon invocation count. We can do elapsed time trending and even tie that back into the number of invocations, and you can change the range to any window of time you want. Here I'm at a 4 hour range. What if I want on a 5-minute range? And you can go back and use these trend charts to understand performance and behavior within a message flow. Too much CPU being consumed. It's taking too long for messages to flow through the environment. Things aren't running. Those are all things that folks want to know about. Maybe I want to look at here. So here's actually a good execution group here, where from in here, I bring my tree and open it back up. There are also applications and libraries that are out there now as part of the IIB world. And within an application, we will automatically identify all the queues that are part of that application. So again, this could be a key part of your overall understanding of a particular application or infrastructure components that are delivering business services throughout the enterprise. So it's important to see this kind of information. Maybe you want to see your message flow summary. And again, you see some more of the same. But what we can do in here is alert on changes. And right now the environment's running well, so I'm not going to. I don't have any alerts triggering or firing because things are going well. But if I went down to my message flow, I can look at things like a daily report. And this is something that a lot of folks don't have any visibility into at all. And there we go. It's a launch. These reports can be made available through a browser. So they don't have to even this is a browser-based client, but you can actually have people have links just to reports to run them if they want to. There's a lot of information here. The elapsed time, maximum CPU time. If I scroll over, the number of threads in pool, how high it may have gone or low, times the number of threads were reached, the maximum number of threads were reached. You might want to watch that one. CPU time. Then, of course, over here, you saw these in the runtime view. The error columns, number of errors processing messages. So that would be reported as well as being is alerted on as you go through the process of managing your IIB infrastructure. There's also weekly and monthly reports, which I won't drill into for the moment. But there's other things that you might want to see. And this is something that we found that some people are really, really interested in. We actually can take your broker, and like a Visio diagram, we can take a message flow, and we can actually bring it to life. Now, this is a simple message flow that bring it to life inside our management console. Now, what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, this is a queue that is an input queue to the message flow. Here is the message flow here. The status of it is it's running. I can see some summary key performance indicators there. But I notice here 6 invocations. How many times? Now it's 4. How many messages are processing through? And you can see them flowing through here and coming out at 2 remote destinations, 2 other queues on other servers. So this is a kind of a great way to see what's happening out there in your message flow, not only from a production standpoint, but from a testing standpoint as well. People want to know what's happening in real time. And visualization is the best way to do that. Who wants to go back and look at logs? Let's do it in real time. You'll notice that there's a lot of green icons here. That means everything's healthy. If there was an invocation to my request fail or my file error logger, that would go red. I'd get an alert, an email would be sent. It could be an SNMP trap or an alert in the TrueSight Operations Management or other enterprise framework tool, and tells me that a message didn't get to its destination. It failed for some reason, and you then have to go in there and work with that. But that's, again, some of the capabilities that we provide you. And if you wanted to drill down into a particular component, you can drill down right into the message processing node and see the details, and again, run a report at the message processing node level, which is we're drilling deeper and deeper into the environment to understand why performance or when performance seemed to have been impacted. So this is a handy way to kind of have a home base again, and you can even go down to the queue by looking at these little buttons that will drill down and see what the queue's doing and the performance on the queue. We talked about this earlier in this discussion. So again, the navigation capabilities of this are very intuitive, very quick and crisp, and it really helps people get to where they have to be to resolve a problem quickly. So that's kind of a quick, high-level overview of Message Broker that helps people understand: is it performing well? Is it available? Where are the errors? Because when you have large message flows, you could have hundreds of message processing nodes, and if the messages aren't coming out, well, where are they stuck? And that's a really difficult question to answer without visualization. So at this point, there's one last thing I did want to show, and it goes back to my my dashboard from my home base. We have this wonderful, if you will, it's an ESB KPI dashboard, and it's not this flow here. This is actually a message flow depicted in a dashboard that shows traffic traversing through different components of the environment. What I wanted to show you is this right here. And this is all the key performance indicators on a single pane of glass. And you can hover over any one of these to get the numbers. And there they are. So this shows me message flow elapsed time. And there's two flows here that we're measuring. Thread pooling, which is nice and low. That's good. That's healthy. Flow reliability. Thread inactive time. Thread pool max outs, okay, we're measuring that. And message processing rates, which is a very important metric to understand how well things are going through your environment. So this is another way to have kind of a report card or a scorecard on your message flows, and this is a request and a response flow. So they're related to one another. So it's kind of good to have these together on a single pane of glass and see what's going on. So at that point, I'm going to pause and just rest assured that with TrueSight Middleware Monitor, we can monitor not only MQ, but IBM Integration Bus in detail, but we can also look at DataPower, and that would be a separate session. But we can get into the DataPower and how that relates to your overall middleware strategy. Thanks for your time today.